Sodanandana Brajajanaranjana Munatira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Gopi Jana Vallabha Jayo Giri Varadhari Jayo Giri Varadhari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Jayo Giri Varadhari Jayo Giri Varadhari Sodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Sodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Munatira Vanachari Munatira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Radha Madhava Astasaki ki jai, Prahlad Nrsimhadev ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This morning we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 13, Dhritarashtra quits home, Shloka 54. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jita-sano, jita-śvāsaḥ. pratyāhṛta-ṣaḍ-indriyaḥ, hari-bhāvanayā dhvasta, rajaḥ-sattva-tamo-malaḥ, jita-sano jita-śvāsaḥ, pratyāhṛta-ṣaḍ-indriyaḥ, hari-bhāvanayā dhvasta, rajaḥ-sattva-tamo-malaḥ, jita-sano jita-śvāsaḥ, pratyāhṛta-ṣaḍ-indriyaḥ, hari-bhāvanayā dhvasta, rajaḥ-sattva-tamo-malaḥ. Please chant. No jita-śvāsaḥ. Jita-āsanaḥ, one who has controlled the sitting posture. Jita- śvāsaḥ, one who has controlled the breathing process. Pratyāhṛta, turning back. Ṣaḍ, 6. Indriyaḥ, senses. Hari, the Absolute Personality of Godhead. Bhavanayā, absorbed in. Dhvasta, conquered. Raja, passion. Sattva, goodness. Tamaḥ, ignorance. Malaḥ, contaminations. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. One who has controlled the sitting postures, the yogic āsanas, and the breathing process can turn the senses towards the Absolute Personality of Godhead and thus become immune to the contaminations of the modes of material nature, namely mundane goodness, passion, and ignorance. Purport. The preliminary activities of the way of yoga are asana, pranayama, pratyāhṛa, dhyana, dharana, etc. Maharaj Dhritarashtra was to attain success in those preliminary actions because he was seated in a sanctified place and was concentrating upon one objective, namely the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. Thus, all his senses were being engaged in the service of the Lord. This process directly helps the devotee to get freedom from the contaminations of the three material modes of nature. Even the highest mode, the material mode of goodness, is also a cause of material bondage, and what to speak of the other qualities, namely passion and ignorance. Passion and ignorance increase the material propensities of hankering for material enjoyment, and a strong sense of lust provokes the accumulation of wealth and power. One who has conquered these two base mentalities and has raised himself to the platform of goodness, which is full of knowledge and morality, cannot also control the senses, namely the eyes, the tongue, the nose, the ear, and touch. But one who has surrendered himself under the lotus feet of Lord Hari, as above mentioned, can transcend all influences of the modes of material nature and be fixed in the service of the Lord. The Bhakti Yoga process therefore directly applies the senses to the loving service of the Lord. This prohibits the performer from engaging in material activities. This process of turning the senses from material attachment to the loving transcendental service of the Lord is called pratyāhṛa, and the very process is called pranayama, ultimately ending in samadhi or absorption in pleasing the Supreme Lord Hari by all means. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Gnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopeka Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangir Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaurat Vishe Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So here in this sloka we hear one of the Narada Muni's descriptions to Maharaj Yudhishthir and other residents of the palace about the activities of Dhritarashtra. As we know, Dhritarashtra was blind from birth, but not only physically blind, he was also spiritually blind. Means that he was very much attached to his sons, and he was all overcome by that attachment and lust and other enemies like greed. And his half brother Vidura, many times he tried to help him, but he didn't want to hear the good advice. But finally, after the Kurukshetra war was over and all his sons were killed, all the Dhritarashtra's sons were killed, and most of the other present on the battlefield of Kurukshetra were killed also. And after Vidura came back to the palace, finally Dhritarashtra's mind was open to receive some spiritual instructions. So Vidura, he didn't spare very harsh words to prompt Dhritarashtra to leave home and to apply himself to the process of self-realization. And that process that he applied himself was Ashtanga Yoga, which is one of the processes for self-realization besides Bhakti Yoga or devotional service. But both of them are yogas, meaning that they are meant to connect us to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And interestingly, here in the Purport, Srila Prabhupada conflates these two yogas. He conflates the Ashtanga Yoga with the Bhakti Yoga, make it looks one. And it has its own it has the meaning why he's doing it, because the goal of both is the same. It's absorption in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the stages that one is passing on both of these paths are similar. So that's why I would like to analyze a little bit of this Ashtanga Yoga process to see what we can withdraw. What can we draw as a lesson for our practice of devotional service or Bhakti Yoga? So Ashtanga Yoga, it has, it's called like this because it has eight steps Everything starts with the yama, means abstinence from sinful activities. Then comes niyama, observances of certain rules and regulations. Then asana, postures, which is just a preparation for meditation. Then pranayama, breathing, which is meant to help a yogi control his mind. Then pratyāhṛta, withdrawal of the senses from external sense objects. After that is achieved dharana, concentration is possible. And then comes dhyana, meditation. And then finally samadhi, which is complete absorption in the object of the meditation. And authority for Ashtanga Yoga, Patanjali Muni, in the very second sutra of his famous Patanjali Yoga Sutras, he says, he defines yoga as yoga chitta vritti nirodha, meaning yoga is the stilling of vrittis, stilling of the changing states of the mind. It's a cessation or nirodha of all permutations or changes, fluctuations of the chitta. In the yoga philosophy, chitta is a subtle internal body, and it's divine, and it's defined as consisting of three layers of buddhi, intelligence, ahankara or ego, and manas, the mind. These three consist chitta. In Sankhya it's slightly different, but for all practical purposes we will use this definition of chitta. So as we know, the physical body, it undergoes transformations. It undergoes birth, growth, maturity, old age, disease, and death. Similarly, as the gross body undergoes transformations, the subtle body or the mind also undergoes different transformations. Sometimes mind feels happiness, sometimes it feels distress, sometimes it's peaceful, sometimes it's disturbed, sometimes feels encouraged, anxiety, sometimes feels fear, courage. These are just some of the unlimited permutations or transformations or fluctuations of the mind, or in other words called vrittis. So mind of the conditioned souls misidentifies the jiva, the pure self, the soul, with these vrittis, with these transformations of the gross and the subtle matter, and then this ignorance is keeping the soul bound in the material world. So yoga involves preventing the mind into being molded into these endless changes, permutations, the vrittis, impressions and thoughts of the objects of this world. And since the chitta, the subtle body, is the product of matter, as everything else in the material world, it consists of three gunas. And we know what these three gunas are: sattva, rajas, and tamas. So sattva is the purest of all the gunas, and it's manifested, when it's manifested in a chitta, it's typically characterized by lucidity, tranquility, wisdom, discrimination, detachment, happiness, peacefulness. So when the chitta is pervaded by the sattva guna, it manifests like this, like happiness, peace, detachment. One feels very light and peaceful and tranquil and happy. When the rajas is predominant in the subtle body, the chitta, it's manifested as a hankering or very energetic endeavor, restlessness, power, also all sort of movement and creative activity. They need rajas, so they are initiated and maintained by rajaguna. And then the tamoguna, this is the guna that is least favorable for yoga and for spiritual life in general, is characterized by ignorance, delusion, disinterest, lethargy, sleep, and general disinclination to any sort of creative activity. So in the Bhagavad Gita, in the chapters 14, 17 and 18, we have a wide range of symptoms connected with these three gunas. For example, in the 14th chapter, we have one shloka, 10 shloka, rajas-tamas-chabhi-bhuya, sattvam bhavati bharata, rajas-sattva-tamas-chaiva, tamas-sattvam rajaḥ-sattva-tamo-malaḥ. So Krishna describes here how the gunas are in continual tension with each other. Sometimes one guna is predominant and conquers the other two, and at other times another guna comes into the prominence and conquers the rest of the two gunas. So they are continually fighting for dominance and suppressing each other. And in the purport on that shloka, Srila Prabhupada says, quote, "But if one wants, he can develop by practice the mode of goodness and thus defeat the modes of ignorance and passion. One can similarly develop the mode of passion and defeat goodness and ignorance, or one can develop the mode of ignorance and defeat goodness and passion. Although there are these three modes of material nature, if one is determined, he can be blessed by the mode of goodness. And by transcending the mode of goodness, he can be situated in pure goodness, which is called the Vasudeva state, a state in which one can understand the science of God." So one can be blessed by the mode of goodness, meaning that the mode of goodness is the most conducive to the spiritual practice. Rajaguna and Tamaguna, they are completely opposite. They are not conducive at all. They are obstacles. While Rajaguna is helping us. But of course, eventually one has to transcend it, to come to the mode of pure goodness. But before that, cultivation of the mode of goodness is very much favorable for spiritual life. So one of the goals of Ashtanga Yoga meditation and any type of meditation or spiritual process based on meditation is to maximize the presence of Sattva Guna in the mind and to minimize the presence of Rajas and Tamas. So all these three gunas, they are inherently present in all material byproducts of Prakriti, including Chitta or the mind. So in that sense, Rajas and Tamas can never be fully eliminated. They can be just minimized or at best reduced to latent unmanifested potential. So clearly, again, I'm repeating, Sattva is the guna who is the most conducive and indispensable to yoga and spiritual practice. While Rajas and Tamas, they're always depicted as the obstacles to yoga. But still, certain amount of Rajas and Tamas is necessary for embodied existence. Otherwise, without the Rajas, there would be no movement, not even digestion. We wouldn't be able to blink our eyes without Rajas. But it has to be minimized as much as possible, and Sattva needs to be maximized in order for the meditation to be successful. So when all these traces of Tamas and Rajas are minimized or stilled in the Chitta, then mind attains its highest potential, which is Sattva Guna, which brings illumination, peace and discernment. So when all these obscurations, other two gunas, they obscure the mind, when all these obscurations are removed, then the soul, which is turn externally toward the material sense objects can finally turn back inwards. And that pure sattva nature of the mind helps to redirect the consciousness inside towards the soul. And then the soul can finally start perceiving spiritual existence, its own spiritual existence and existence of the Lord in the heart with the help of this mode of goodness. So the consciousness becomes, it's like a mirror. When it's covered with the Raja and Tamo guna, you cannot see much. Once the covering, the thick covering of Raja guna and Sattva guna is removed, one can start to perceive the spiritual nature of the self. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the first canto, second chapter, 19th shloka, it is said, Tada rajaḥ-sattva-tamo-malaḥ kama lobha dayāschaye jita-āsanaḥ stitam sattve prasidati. Srila Prabhupada translates it beautifully to the lens of Bhakti Yoga. As soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness, and he becomes completely happy. So only when we are established in the goodness we can be happy. There is no happiness in lower gunas. So the success of our spiritual practice, of our sadhana, depends so much on our state of mind, depends on the predominant gunas influencing our mind. So it is very helpful to know in which state our mind is. And in this way we can cultivate the states of mind that are favorable and try to prevent the states of mind that are not favorable for spiritual life. And for this purpose we will take help again from Patanjali Muni and Yoga Sutras. In the very first verse of Patanjali Yoga Sutra, Patanjali Muni, he says, Atta yoganu shasanam. Now the teachings of yoga are presented. And then there are many commentators, and one of them, Vyasa, he gives classification of different states of mind that aspiring yogi can experience. So there are 4 major states of mind. First one is called kshipta, wandering mind or monkey mind. I'll just first list them and then I'll explain each of them. So kshipta, wandering or monkey mind. Muda, dull or confused mind. Vikshipta, third state, it's a distracted mind, or sometimes it's called butterfly mind. And ekagra, the fourth one, ekagra, not the last, is one point in mind. Mind that is focused on one point, ekagra. These are 4 states, and then there is a 5th state also, which is called nirodha, or mind that is completely absorbed in the object of meditation, absorbed in samadhi. So let us see what are the characteristics of these 4 states in order that we can recognize it in ourselves. So kshipta, wandering or monkey mind. This is the most common state of the mind of 99% of people on this earth. That means that this is a state of mind that is heavily influenced by Rajaguna and Tamaguna, mixture of these two. So in this state the mind is constantly jumping from one object to another. It cannot stay very long with one thing because the mind just feels bored. For example, you take a remote control and have a TV and you watch one channel. After 1 minute it seems very boring, you switch it to another, then to another, to another. Or you take your smartphone and just endlessly scroll Facebook posts, or check this message, check that message. The mind just cannot stay with one thing because it doesn't derive any pleasure or happiness from that particular thing. Basically, the soul wants to enjoy, but because it's heavily influenced by this Raja and Tamaguna, it finds no pleasure in whatever it focuses. So that's why it cannot focus. And then the only pleasure is actually this process of changes, of changing from one thing to another thing. That's why it's called monkey. It's just jumping to next and next and next thing. And it's just impossible to concentrate in this state of mind. What to speak about meditate, what to speak about chant japa. But sometimes we do chant japa, and the mind, for 1-2 minutes we say Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Then some message comes and we check that message. And then we put the phone and then we continue chanting, but then we think, oh, we didn't check WhatsApp or Instagram or Telegram or Messenger or so many things. It just, you cannot stay with one thing. You have to change in order to feel some pleasure. And when this kshipta state goes into extreme, it can manifest as a mental disease. It can manifest as, I know some devotees actually who have panic attacks. During the night, they have these panic attacks and they cannot sleep and they're very much disturbed and they have to take antidepressants, Xanax, Prozac. These antidepressants, they just make your mind dull, kind of put the rajas down, but increase the tamaguna. So this is the next stage of the mind, called muda. It's confused mind, or donkey mind, they call it also. Tamaguna is predominant in this state of mind, and it's characterized by sleepiness, lethargy. If you experience it ever when you sit and start to chant, and you just doze and your head falls, or as soon as the Bhagavatam class starts, you also fall asleep. It's called muda state of mind. Mind in this state is dull, sluggish, sleepy. This is a very thick layer of tamas. It's also characterized by lack of energy, lack of vitality, very poor concentration. Mind just wants to sleep. And it's called also lahaya. Bhakti calls it lahaya. And the soul somehow finds a pleasure in this forgetfulness. But it can go again to extreme. If it's too much increased, we experience depression, sadness. All these mental states are the result of this muda state of mind, or increased of tamaguna. Needless to say, this is also not a state of mind that is helpful or conducive for meditation, of yoga. Third state of mind is called vikshipta. It's a higher state of mind, but still not quite conducive. It's called distracted mind or the butterfly mind. What the butterfly does, it just flies from one flower, stays there for a minute, then goes to the next flower and to the next flower. So again, the process of change is there, but it's not so rapid as in the first state of kshipta. In this stage, we can concentrate for some time. For example, if you ever studied for some exam, you have some exam in the school or Bhakti Shastra, whatever, you have to push yourself. So you sit and with the energy and determination, you concentrate for some hours and study and solve whatever problems you have. But after that, you feel so exhausted and so tired, and then you have to give a mind a break. So mind concentrates for some times, but then goes off and wanders elsewhere. Or when you're watching a movie, you become absorbed in it for some time, completely absorbed in the movie, especially if it's some adventure, very, very interesting movie. But what is common for this state, that there is a underlying tension, force. You have to put a lot of energy to keep the concentration for some time, and you're not relaxed. You're very tense, and your body is also very, very, very tense. Sometimes you see devotees trying hard to chant japa. You can see on their face how they are struggling and trying to concentrate. But this is actually this vikshipta state of mind. You're putting a lot of effort, but because there is a predominant influence of rajas, it's very difficult to concentrate for longer periods of time. Because the tension is just boiling inside of you, and it can explode anytime. It's like when you have a pot with the water and you put the lid on the top and the water is boiling, that lid can go off at any time. You're not relaxed because of this rajas who is boiling inside of you. So it's a very turbulent state of mind. Mind is sometimes stable, but most of the time it's disturbed. So again, it's obvious that this state of mind is also not conducive for yoga. All these three states, kshipta, muda, and vikshipta, are completely not favorable for practice of meditation, yoga, or spiritual life in general. And somehow it's a common problem, not in outside world, but also in devotee circles. I remember maybe 20 years ago, when I was teaching in a school, there were some children who were a little naughty and restless. They couldn't sit for long, and then they were diagnosed with something called ADD, Attention Deficit Disorder. Means that you have deficit of attention. That was a kind of psychological diagnosis the psychologist would give. But actually it was just increased kshipta and vikshipta states of mind. And nowadays, after 20 years, not only few children in school, but basically everybody has this ADD. And it's not only ADD, it's a hyper attention deficit disorder. Because then, that time, we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have internet. Nowadays, you have thing in your pocket, and every few minutes, the sound comes, and the new message comes, and you look, and you check this message, that message, and it's impossible to stay in a peaceful and sattvic state in mind in this condition. I remember 20 years ago, I was checking internet once a week. I would go to Chakrabavan, there was an internet cafe, and you would check your email once a week, and that was also too much. But now, how many times a day, maybe 100 times, we check all the messages. How can mind stay peaceful in this sort of environment? It's impossible. It's very difficult. And then, after the vikshipta state of mind, we have the fourth state, where actually the real meditation starts. It's called ekagra. Ekagra is one potent mind with a predominated sattva guna. In contrast to vikshipta, which is very tense state of mind where you need a lot of effort to concentrate, in ekagra, concentration is very easy. Whatever you want to concentrate, you concentrate with ease, and you are relaxed. You're very much relaxed. Your attention just flows. You start chanting, and you forget about everything else. All inner noise is completely calmed down. Mind is very peaceful, aware, and ready to concentrate. And this state is characterized that you are present in the present moment. You are living in now. In kshipta, muda, and vikshipta, you're always thinking about the past, lamenting for the past, hankering for the future. You're never fully present in the present moment. But in a ekagra state of mind, you are here and now. There is no constant inner chatter going on in your mind. Whatever you do it fully, with full mindfulness and full presence. So it's a very light state, and this is the state where actually the real meditation starts. In this state, you can focus on one thing. You can focus on the holy name, which is our real object of meditation. And after Ekagra, there is a fifth state, Nirodha, fully focused mind, completely restrained and absorbed in samadhi. But it is so far from our experience that I will not analyze it much more. It's a state of mind that is beyond the gunas. So again, I'm repeating, meditation and samadhi is possible only in this Ekagra and Nirodha stages. First three states, Kshipta, Vikshipta and Muda, are completely non-conducive and detrimental to spiritual practice. But somehow most of our day we spend in these states of mind that are not conducive. But sometimes, by chance, our mind may enter into this Ekagra, become fully peaceful. So we have to recognize it and try to maintain it and cultivate these states of mind, of one-pointed attention. The problem is that we are so much programmed, used, habituated on the lower states of mind, like Kshipta, Muda and Vikshipta, that as soon as the mind becomes peaceful, we feel bored, we feel strange. Oh, something is strange, nothing is going on here. There are no messages coming. I have to do something. And then we disturb ourselves and again put ourselves in the Raja and Tamoguna states of mind. And then again we are distracted, we are disturbed. So we have to learn how to become content and happy by being peaceful. It is difficult because we are habituated of being content by being disturbed, but if we notice and if we become aware that these states of mind are not conducive for our spiritual life, are not conducive for our spiritual progress, we'll try to make the mind peaceful, to come into the Ekagra state, and then when we practice our japa, chanting the holy names in these Ekagra states, our progress will be rapid. In the third canto, Lord Kapila-dev, he describes some qualities of pure chitta, of pure mind, pure subtle body. In the 26th chapter, he says, Svachatvam avikaritvam, shantatvam iti chetasa, vritibir lakshanam proktam, yatapam prakriti para. Translation: after the manifestation of the Mahat Tattva, these features appear simultaneously. As water in its natural state, before coming in contact with earth, is clear, sweet and unruffled, so the characteristic traits of pure consciousness are complete serenity, clarity and freedom from distraction. So Svachatvam is a clarity or purity of the mind. And Srila Prabhupada in Purport says, in pure consciousness one can perceive a slight reflection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sridhar Swami and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur say, when the mind has this purity or clarity, it has Bhagavan Bimba Grahitva, ability to catch the reflection of the Lord. So the mind or chitta is like a mirror. When it's cleansed from Raja and Tamoguna, whatever we put in front of this mirror will reflect. So if we put holy name as the transcendental object of our meditation, and we chant the holy name in a Ekagra state of mind, with one point attention, that holy name will manifest this quality of Svachatvam. Bhagavan Bimba Grahitva means that the spurti of the Lord will appear in our heart. For a short while, we'll see the form of the Lord manifesting. And then avikaritvam, the mind, when it's pure, it's without transformation, and shantatvam, it's completely peaceful and serene. So the stages of spiritual progress are described by Srila Jiva Goswami in his Bhakti Sandarbha, it's Anucheda 256, he describes, at first a person must hear the holy name to achieve purity of chitta. So the purity of the heart will happen if we hear the holy name. But the point is that we can hear it only if we are in a kagra state of mind. In kshipta, vikshipta and muda, we don't hear. We either sleep or think about other things. We don't really hear the holy name. And then the purity of heart never happens. The heart never becomes purified. And in this way we can chant 20 years, 30 years, whole life, and still we make no progress. And in this way many lifetimes can pass. So that's why it's of utmost importance that we cultivate sattvic state of mind or a kagra state in order to be able to cleanse it. And then Srila Jiva Goswami continues, therefore, when his chitta has become pure, it is a fit appearance place for the Lord's beautiful form. And as soon as the form of the Lord manifests in the heart, as a result of hearing and chanting, the devotee experiences purti of Lord's qualities. That means that the qualities or gunas of the Lord will appear if we chant in this state of the mind. And the next step, the Lord's associates and their characteristics, called parishads, will manifest if one continues to chant in this ekagra state of the mind. And after the parishads, the Lord's associates will manifest, then the Lord's lila will start becoming manifested in front of our pure chitta. So this is sadhana krama, the progression of sadhana as described by Srila Jiva Goswami. But it completely depends on the state of mind in which chant the holy name. Again, I'm repeating, ekagra sattvic mind is the turning point for making a real substantial spiritual progress. And sometimes it's actually equivalent to the stage of nishtha. Means that you become steady. Nishtha doesn't mean that one is steady in his external activities. Yeah, he is attending Mangala Arati for the last 20 years. Yeah, this is some sort of steadiness of physical activity. But inside, the mind can be still very much disturbed and contaminated and distracted. This is not real nishtha. The real nishtha means steadiness of the mind. And this steadiness comes only when the lower gunas, tamo and raja guna, are eliminated from the mind and the mind is established in predominantly sattva guna, when it becomes ekagra. And we are so much used on this distracted lower tamasic and rajic states of mind that somehow we need to learn to appreciate the sattvic state of mind and cultivate it by all means. In this way only we'll be able to make spiritual progress. Otherwise we might waste a lot of time. We can work hard, but it will be like a trying to walk in air. You're working very hard, but you're not moving. But if we take care to bring our mind to the ekagra sattvic state and then chant the holy name with one pointed attention, the cleansing of the heart will happen and very rapid progress will follow. And then eventually the full realization of Krishna will happen. Okay, I think I will stop here. In case you have any questions. Yes, Prabhu, do we have a mic anywhere?
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhu, for the very detailed description of the different stages of the mind. Prabhu, like the outside, like many times a quality is being emphasized as the multitasking. So does the multitasking falls in the which state of mind in a way? Like there's, I mean, outside qualities that multitasking is good. I mean, like, so, can you please comment on that?
Yeah, multitasking is considered to be a qualification on your CV when you're applying for a job in a company. You can multitask, you can do 5 things or 10 things at the same time. But actually this multitasking is completely, absolutely unfavorable for spiritual practice. You are not doing one thing fully, but you're doing 10 things partially, and your mind is completely dispersed. You sit here in Bhagavata class, you chant japa, and at the same time you listen to class and you scroll your smartphone. This is called multitasking. And how can you expect for mind to become steady and to focus on anything? We go nowhere like this. It might be good for achieving some business, corporate aims, or whatever it is. But for making spiritual progress, multitasking is absolutely detrimental. It's the killer of self-realization. I would not recommend it to anybody. It's better just to do one thing at a time, being fully mindful, fully present. But if you can, but because the kshipta mind is so unsatisfied to stay with one thing, it needs to jump to another, to another, and to another. And then this jumping, he thinks it's a pleasure. This jumping, this multitasking, the kshipta mind considers as a happiness. But it's not actually happiness. A kagra mind is completely content and satisfied to stay with just one thing, to focus on one thing, to be present here and now in the present, to be mindful to whatever it is doing. And this is sattva guna, and the happiness in material world, if there is any happiness, it's possible only in sattva guna, which means in a sattvic, peaceful state of mind. Raja and tamoguna states of mind, there is absolutely zero happiness. But because we are so much conditioned to these so-called lower pleasures, we think it's a happiness by being distracted, by being disturbed. And even if we are not disturbed, we will do some things to disturb ourselves in order to feel some agitation. We cannot live without agitation, without being disturbed in the mind, because we are so much used to it. So we have to recognize it and stop it. At least when we chant japa, at least we should leave the phone off on the flight mode, or keep it away from yourself, at least until you finish your 16 rounds. Otherwise, what kind of chanting will be that? It's not good. One friend told me, first thing I do in the morning, I check my smartphone, just to wake up, just to agitate some rajas, from tamas to bring some rajas in their mind. So for a few minutes he checks the messages, and then he goes for taking bath and other things. No. Just keep the phone far from you until you finish your rounds at least. And then be agitated the rest of the day if you wish. But it's better not to be. Yeah, the gadgets, they're changing the life of the modern civilization for good and for bad. Of course, there are good sides. People can listen to the class. You can talk to anyone in the world. But there is so much danger inherent in this technology. We have a 4G now. 4G is not enough. We need a faster 5G. We need Internet of Things. We need to be connected to everything in the world at the same time. You're just making the mind crazy and mad. And you cannot practice spiritual life like this. It's very difficult. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for your class. I have 2 queries, Prabhuji. One is that why Dhritarashtra why did he choose Ashtanga Yoga instead of Bhakti Yoga? Or Vidura advised him to do it. What is the reason? Number 1. Number 2, previous slokas, there is place called Sapta-śrota, means where the Ganges were divided into 7 branches. On the bank of that Sapta-śrota, Dhritarashtra performed his Ashtanga Yoga. So is the place still there, Sapta-śrota in Himalayas? Any idea of that?
I don't know exactly where this place is located in present day India. Sorry, cannot say for that. But the reason why he start practicing Ashtanga Yoga, not Bhakti Yoga. I think it's explained by Srila Prabhupada or some acharyas that because he was very offensive to Pandavas, so he committed Vaishnava aparadha. And that could not be forgiven so quickly, so easily. So he had to accept the lower process for self-realization, which is Ashtanga Yoga. But still, it was very, very, big advancement, big progress for him, because he was completely materialistic. So for him to achieve this sort of yogic perfection, it's something amazing that you don't see. And in very short time, he was meditating, and then he achieved samadhi, and then he burned his body. Which ordinary person can do that? It's also high achievement. Just he couldn't go to the highest perfection, but still, it was an amazing progress. But because of this Vaishnava aparadha towards the Pandavas, because he always supported Duryodhana and his sons who tried to kill Pandavas so many times, he also committed Vaishnava aparadha. So that's why in this life he couldn't go to the very top of the yoga ladder. So he had to accept Ashtanga Yoga. But perhaps in the future, in the next life, or wherever he ended up, he could perfect himself after that offense is cleansed. Okay, I think we'll stop here. It's 9 o'clock. Just very short, okay.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. You nicely described the 4 stages of mind. But Prabhuji, nowadays we see that in a practical example, in practical life, we see in online preaching. In online preaching, we have to give much time to internet. We have to connect to the internet. I have also experienced so much time. If we give the most time to the internet, minds naturally deviate from negative things. So, what is the check and balance to study our minds or to?
Yes, somehow we have to make some discipline, to discipline ourselves and to say, these hours are dedicated for internet. And the rest of the hours, I will not touch it. I will not scroll the messages, I will not check Facebook. Only in this time, after lunch or whatever is designated time, I will do it. The rest of the time, when I chant japa, when I read Shastra, when I do any sort of other spiritual activity, I will stay away from it. Somehow, nobody else will force you to do that. You have to somehow discipline yourself. You have to put some boundaries on yourself. Sometimes parents, there is this, how is it called, parental control software, where they control the internet time of their children. Because if they don't control them, the children tend to play video games all day, which is completely destructive to their psychophysiological development. So you have to introduce these parental controls. But since we are grown up, and we don't have parents to do that, we have somehow to be our own parent and protect ourselves from danger of being distracted, whether it's internet or whatever it is. Somehow we have to make a strict schedule and strictly follow it. Say, this time I'm just chanting, I'm not touching my smartphone, I'm not checking messages, I'm not scrolling the Facebook posts. We have to discipline ourselves, there is no other way. Otherwise mind will just be disturbed, and we will chant, but it will be a mockery of chanting, it will not be a real chanting, it will just an imitation of chanting, and we will go nowhere. We'll spend just years and years of this sort of chanting in a kshipta state of mind, and then we'll waste our life. And then next life we have to continue from where it stopped. So better we become serious now. Okay, it's 9 o'clock, I have to stop. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki